Decide to buy. So homeownership lays the foundation for a life of financial security and personal choice. So understanding equity. So, closing day equity buildup begins. This is people always get very confused by this. So they're like, okay, so I buy a 30-year mortgage on my property. Does that mean at year 15 I've paid off half of my mortgage? No, that is not how it works. The banks are always going to want to make sure that they get their money first. And so it actually takes up to year 22 in a 30-year mortgage for your home to get paid off. And the reason for that is it front loads. It's like a big chart that like front loads the interest that you have to pay to the bank at the beginning. And so as your interest payments get higher and lower and lower, your principal, which is going to actually pay off the loan, then will reverse. And at year 22, those two lines cross. And then of course at year 30, your home is then fully paid off. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So finding your agent, what is the purpose of having a real estate agent with you? Well, the reason for that is because there's a lot of different things that you need to be able to partner with when you're hiring an agent. There's things like helping you understand disclosures, helping you find great properties, connecting with lenders. There's all sorts of great things about working with an agent. And so when do you hire an agent? The reality is at the very beginning. So like, for example, as me as a buyer agent, I'm there to help educate you about the market. So, those charts that we're looking at, I have a whole system that I could sit down with people for an hour and go dive into charts on like how prices have gone up and down, how many days on market, how many are houses selling over asking price or under asking price, and even do that by neighborhood. So in San Francisco, for example, I could compare Soma versus the Mission versus Pacific Heights. There's all sorts of different things I can help you with. Help you analyze your wants and needs and help you understand exactly what you're looking for so that I can drive you to the right properties. That includes like, do I want a condo that has less maintenance, or I don't want a single family home where I have more space and I don't potentially have neighbors sharing walls with me, right? There's pros and cons to both of those, which lets me help you steer you to homes that are going to fit your criteria. Coordinate the work of other professionals. So that's helping you with lenders. That could be help connecting you to inspectors. So maybe, the property doesn't have a home inspection already and you want to get inspection with your contract as you ratify to make sure that there's no issues with the chimney or the hot water heater, etc. Could also be after you purchase a home, connecting you with a painter. You move in and the walls are all scuffed up from the previous owner and you want to get it painted a new color or something. I obviously can help you with that. Negotiate on your behalf. So I'm here to ensure that you get the best price possible on the home that you're looking to buy. Seller's agent, their job is to get the seller the best price possible, right? And so for that reason, I personally don't ever do what's called double ending or dual agency where I represent the seller and buyer, because I don't think there's a way for me to help the buyer get the lowest price possible and help the seller get the highest price possible at the same time, right? Those two things are in direct competition. So that's why it's really important that you never necessarily say, oh, I'll just work with the listing agent to purchase a home. Well, that listing agent has already signed a contract with the seller and has a fiduciary duty to get the highest price possible for that home, right? So if you're like, oh, I'll just have the listing agent write the contract. Well, they're just going to write the contract for whatever you say. They're not going to give you any advice because they can't say, oh yeah, you should offer this, because then they could be they could be not fulfilling their fiduciary duty to the seller if they say, oh yeah, the seller will take a price, below this number. Like that doesn't work, because then they're not actually putting the best interest of the seller first, which is what they already have because they have a signed agreement with that seller, right? So that's why it's really important for you to ensure that you work with someone who's going to represent you. And then we also solve problems that may arise. I had a situation that happened in an escrow where we were all ready to close escrow. We had like 1 week left, and escrow reached out to us and said, hey, the seller isn't in the United States right now and can't sign all the documents. And I'm like, okay, so what options do we have here? And they're like, well, the seller, and I wasn't representing the seller, I was representing the buyer. They're like, well, the seller, I told the seller that they could go to the embassy in Mexico and they could sign, because if they're signing at the embassy, that's considered sovereign soil for the US, and that is allowed for them to sign at an embassy. But the challenge was that the embassy didn't have any appointments available. Like, you have to kind of book an appointment to get a passport or anything that you want to do at an embassy in advance. And they didn't have anything for like 3 weeks or something. So we're like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So they came back, the listing agent came back and said, well, we're going to get the seller to book a flight and come back to Texas, and they're going to sign in Texas and then fly back to Mexico. I'm like, great. When's that happening? Oh, well, they can't get a flight for a couple days, so it'll probably be next week. I'm like, okay, well, my client, the buyer, has already given notice to his apartment that he's living in. He's already like said that he's moving out. Now he has to find a place to live because he thought we were closing escrow next week, and now we're not. And so I was able to negotiate with that agent to help cover his costs of where he had to like kind of find housing for a week period. And so I was able to negotiate some money that he got back from the seller because it wasn't my client's fault that the seller was in Mexico and not here in the US to sign for a property that he was trying to sell, right? So that's just one example of what a real estate agent is going to help you through and navigate with you through an escrow process. There's always all sorts of bumps and things that come up in that process, and you want someone to help negotiate that on your behalf.